You said your family started here in the 1600s, right?
1620.
Out east?
No, in Massachusetts. They came over from Kent, England.
Mayflower.
And originally, the Edwards was from Wales. Then the Welsh, and then they went over to England, Kent, England. Some of them immigrated over there. And then they came over here to Massachusetts. And then from Massachusetts, they came over to Long Island. I have where they made treaties with the Indians,
What do you mean?
the
made
Shinnecock,
Made trees?
and treaty.
Oh, treaty. You have the treaty?
I have a signed, a copy,
Wow.
and they could read and write. A lot of them made an X, and someone put their name below it. My ancestors all signed,
Okay.
so they were educated.
So who was able to read and write? The Indians? No.
No, the American.
The American.
I mean,
Your
the
relatives.
settlers.
The settlers, okay. That wasn't that usual for everybody to know how to read and write back then. Okay.
And they made a treaty with the Montaukes. The Indians from Rhode Island or Connecticut, I think it was Rhode Island, would come over to Long Island and raid the Indians over here on Montauk. They made a treaty, the settlers made a treaty that they would defend the Montauks from the Indians that were raiding them. So I have that. And then the English, during the Revolutionary War, the English were going to raid Long Island and the, I guess the South Fork. And they were in their ships ready to land. And this is the story that I have.
Okay.
There was a hill, and they would march around the hill, let the English see them, then go back and then go round and round and round, changing coats or whatever they could. And so the English said there are too many people there, so they went back to Massachusetts.
Wow, that was smart.
That's a story that I have. And then I have where they would go to Connecticut to find a girl to marry. And I have a story on that where this one person went over there and found a girl and she accepted him. But he had to ask the father his permission. And the father asked if, do you have a home? Do you have a house? Do you have all this and that? And finally he gave his permission, they got married.
Now that was your relative?
No, I don't know who it was, but I do have where one of my ancestors was married with a Connecticut girl, brought over.
So your family was out east, or they were here in Sayville initially?
No, my mother was born in East Quogue. My father was born in Bohemia, here, but he could speak Czech as well as any of them. In fact, one lady, her daughter, said that my father could speak Czech like they did over in the old country, and she loved to talk to him because he didn't have an accent.
What was your mother's maiden name?
Goodale.
Goodale.
He was born in, I have the, I know where he was born. I have all that data. I have stories from East Hampton and Southampton where the Goodale attending school before the Revolutionary War. His teacher, I know his teacher. I have all that. Different data I picked up here and there.
That's your mother's side of the family?
My mother's side.
Okay.
My father's side, my great-grandfather settled on Ocean Avenue. I don't know where he came from. He came from Rhode Island, from Massachusetts to Rhode Island to Long Island, but I couldn't go back. You know, you can't get data by staying here. I wrote to the Westport, Massachusetts Historical Society and told them I'd like to come over and spend a week, and where should I go to get data on on the Greene family. And he never answered, so I never went any further back. But he was a settler on Long Island in Bohemia on Ocean Avenue. My dad took me over and showed me his house and so forth. I have pictures of the house and the family standing outside in 1893. And I gave that to the Historical Society in Bohemia. My great-grandfather was a farmer. Dad told me. And he used to deliver vegetables, sell vegetables in East Islip with a horse and wagon. That's what people used to do. And even when I was young, Mr. Rogers used to come around from A&S, Abraham and Strauss, and he would have a book and show my mother sheets or blankets or whatever, and then she would order, and then he would order them from the main store or whatever, and then deliver them to my mother and all the other people on the route. Then there was another Mr. Rogers who sold life insurance, Prudential, and he would come around to the house and collect a quarter. So Mom insured all of us. It was a quarter a week or something like that for $100 life insurance. And they used to come around then, and Mr. Russo the junk man, used to come around with a truck or horse and wagon, and you buy whatever your junk you were trying to sell.
When did you first have a car in the family?
Not me,
Did
alone.
your dad get one? Did your father have a car?
When I was 16, I went to visit my grandfather in East Quogue. He was a farmer. He asked me if I had a license. I said, yes, I had a license, driver's license. He handed me a key and told me go out, and told me which barn to go into. And I went in, unlocked the door and went in. I saw this Model T up on blocks. So I ran back in and told him, yes, Grandpa, yes, I like that. So he gave me the registration. He said it needs a battery, gasoline, oil, and pump up the tires. Take it off the blocks and pump up the tires. So I did that. Dad and I did it. And I drove it home.
That was your car?
I had it for about, maybe 2 or 3 years. And then I sold it for $5 because I was visiting my grandfather again, and he said, do you like the truck? Is it still good? And I told him yes. he said, but here's another key, go out in the other barn. And that was a Pontiac, all the sedan. I was really in envy of all the kids then. And so I was always the one that they gave things to, I guess. But I was always pals with my dad, so when in the summertime when I was young, he would take me with him. Mom would cook. She would make sandwiches for two of us. Then he was a business agent for the Carpenters Union. And so he would take me with him during the summer. And I always wondered why he always picked on me to take with him all the time. I had a brother and a sister and a brother, I should say. And they were younger than I. So when I was 5 years old, my mom had two young people to take care of. So Dad took me, so that Mom didn't have to take care of three, and run after three kids. So I remember a lot of times that he would go into a house that was being built, and then he'd come out and tell. I stayed in the car. I was, he was on business agent, so he would come in and say, "I want you to see this," and they would have murals all over the walls on all these big estates. Then he took me to one where I think they called it Island of Lost Men. And this man had a house built, and he had secret rooms in it, so he could disappear for a week. No one would know where he was. And he'd be in these secret rooms.
Strange man.
He was a very rich man.
And where was that?
That was in Southampton. Yeah. But I fished with my dad, I hunted with him, helped him paint, helped him around the house. We were pals.
You said you had older brothers too, though.
Well, they weren't interested. They were 8 years older, so they weren't interested in being with Dad. They had other friends and things to do.
And that was Howard and
Walter. Walter became postmaster, and but I was working there. In 1934, I was special delivery messenger, and
who hired you?
Pardon?
Who was the postmaster then?
Sayville Library,
Okay.
and he got in trouble later on, and Walt went to work for them in 1937, 3 years after I worked there. So he was working, and Saul got in trouble. He was I would say. And so they had to appoint someone right away, and Walt was working there, so they appointed him. Then he went into World War II, and he was drafted. And then they had where they released all the draftees and sent them home. And then I remember we were on our way to Southampton to visit my aunt. I had the car radio on, and Roosevelt was on, saying the Japanese had attacked Pearl Harbor. So Walt said, "There I go." So he was in the Coast Artillery in the beginning. Then he went into the infantry in Fort Bragg, and he was told that they were going to leave that night on the train to go over, to go to Africa. They were, he knew, later on found out. And he went for a walk, and he met this major. The major talked to him, and he said, you know, he talked to him, and he liked the way he talked. And so Walt was marching that night to the train, and a runner came up and said, Walter Greene will fall out. And my brother, go back to your barracks. My brother didn't know why. And he was sent to officers' training. That major put his name in. Then he worked in the Pentagon, going back and forth to the White House with messages from the Pentagon to the White House. And he met Marshall, and Walt said one time he went in and saluted. Marshall said, for God's sake, stop saluting me. Every time you salute me, I have to salute you back. So he said, stop saluting. And then he was transferred to Texas Airfield. Then he was transferred to Hawaii. He remained in Hawaii the rest of the war. But if he hadn't gone for that walk, he wouldn't have gone, he'd have been over in Africa in the infantry.
Fate. Yeah. You said you didn't go into the war. You didn't serve in the war?
I volunteered and they sent me home. I don't have an eardrum. In swimming, we used to swim underwater, tag, and I got water in my ear and infection. I couldn't get rid of it. So I volunteered, went in, gave me a physical, and said, go home. And I asked him why. He said, you don't have an eardrum. I said, I know it. He said, well, I said, I could do something. He said, no. He said, if there's a gas attack, there's a tube going to your ear to your throat. And he said, it wouldn't be safe. He said, you'd be killed or something. So I worked on the window, and all these mothers would send care packages over to their children over in Europe and so forth, and out to the Asia or Pacific. And they would say, why aren't you in the service? You should be ashamed of yourself. So I had that all during the war.
While you were in the post office, you were at the window. That was upsetting, I would think, right?
Well, it didn't make me feel very good. But so after the war, I took the I took the test before the war and became a regular carrier. And then they decided that they wanted me inside as a clerk. So I went inside as a clerk, and well, I retired, 39 years in the post office. And I never had to look for a job ever. People always come looking for me, asking me to come to work with them.
That's it. You said you wanted to do something else, though, if you had a choice.
I didn't feel as though I'd done my potential, lived up to my potential. I thought I was better than the post office. I could do better. You know, post office is a good job, and it's responsible and all that, but I thought I could do better. I thought I could make a lot of more money. But I didn't go to college. My mother and father couldn't afford it. All during the war, my dad died in 1940, He was 54 years old. And so I supported my mother and brother and sister until after the war. I was earning $76.15. They paid every 15 days, not 14. And earning $76.50 every 15 days. I gave my mom 70 of it, and I kept 6 myself. And then she kept the house going. I thought she should pay the bills, like when my dad was alive. He handed over his paycheck to Mom. She did all the paying of the bills and everything. But I had a good mother and father. I knew I was loved. All of us did.
How'd you meet your wife?
Pardon?
How did you meet your wife?
In the post office. She worked for Delphi. And she had worked for them in Hempstead. And they transferred out here and into the old 88 at Delphi.
I heard that.
And so she lost her job in Hempstead, but then her father bought a home in Great River. So she went back to work for Delphi again in Sayville. And the first day, box 353, I saw this girl come walking in. I was at the window, and I'd gone out with quite a few different girls, nice girls. And I saw this girl come walking in, and I looked at it and I thought, that's the one for me. Never even talked to her. And she walked up to the window, to box 353, and it was pretty well filled up. So she came to the window and asked me if I would give her the mail for 353. So I gave her the mail. And then after that, I made sure that box was jammed shut, so she couldn't get the mail out. So she always had to come to the window to ask me for it. So that's how I met her. Yeah, we never had an argument. She knew what I wanted, and I knew what she wanted.
How long were you dating before you got married?
Oh, we went together for a long, long time. I was sort of putting it off, and finally she asked me if I would marry her. She said, don't you think it's time? We went together for about 3 years. But I was having a good time with my friends too. We were bowling and doing all those different things. But I'm glad I married her.
You had one child?
She once told me that she was happier with me since she married me than any time in her life. So I guess I was a good husband.
Good.
I told you about the time she baked the pie, apple pie, and I was thinking about it at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Guy, I haven't had an apple pie in a long time. We were married about 4 years then. And so I went home and went into the kitchen, and there was an apple pie baked. And I loved you, vented into it. And so I asked her, when did you decide to bake the apple pie? Because it's still hot. She said, around 3 o'clock. And thought came to my mind to make an apple pie.
And that's when you were thinking of it.
We could read each other's minds pretty well. She liked the same things I liked, and I liked the same things she did.
So how long were you together, all together?
9 years altogether.
Married 9 years?
9 years.
And then 3 years dating, so about 12 years?
We dated around 3 years, somewhere in there. And our first date was a Sunday drive, and she had to take her sister with her, going out with this new fellow. So the younger sister went with us. And so from then on we dated. But she said she went to this, when that first time she went to school at Delphi, and she said, I met a nice fellow. She told this lady I knew. And she said, but he didn't ask me to go out with him. So this person, I won't name, told my aunt that there's a nice girl in Delphi that would like to go out with your nephew. So my aunt told me that there was a nice girl in Delphi that would like to go out with me. So then I asked her to go out. And then from then on we were. It's funny how things go around and around.
Meant to be. You said your parents lived in Bayport, you built them a house?
I did. I built my own home.
And for your parents too, did you build a house in Bayport? No?
No, they lived in Great River, her parents.
Your parents?
My parents lived they were gone at that time.
Where did your parents live initially?
They lived on Off Forster Avenue on Hamilton Street.
In Sayville?
Mm.
Oh, okay. That's where you grew up? Okay.
I grew up there.
But you told me you built some homes. Which homes did you build?
I built my own home.
Okay.
Well, my brother was the carpenter, my younger brother.
Howard? Oh, not Howard.
And his name was Llewellyn, John Llewellyn.
Okay.
And so we had a nice new home to go into when I was married. It was all finished. Kathy helped paint the house. And the night before we were getting married, we were putting curtains up and so forth. And then I'm driving home and my car broke down on the Great River Bridge. We walked to her mother's house, and Kathy's house. And he came back and towed my car over to their house. So I didn't have a car. We had planned on going to Pennsylvania and so forth on a honeymoon. So we didn't have a car, so we spent the time, my younger brother lent me one of his cars. He had 2 cars. And we went around, found a car, and I bought a new car.
And what street is that house on that you built?
Seaman,
Seaman.
212 Seaman.
Is that where you live now? Okay.
I don't live there now. They taxed me out of it.
Oh, okay.
The first year was $686. Second year was about $785. The third year was $3,000. And I couldn't afford it. I was only earning about $5,000 in the post office.
So you moved to a house that you built, or no?
No, I went to work, moved in with my brother and sister-in-law. And then finally got another home.
That was a lot of money back then.
But Kathy was sick for 2 years with cancer. And we had a 2.5-year-old son when she died. So I had to retire from the post office. Someone had to take care of him. My sister-in-law took him for a year, my brother's wife. And so I would go over and bathe him at night and put him to bed. And, well, finally I could retire from the post office. They wanted me to stay 5 more years and be postmaster of Bayport. The inspectors came out from New York, but I couldn't do it. I had to take care of my son. And he was asthmatic, so I had to move to Florida. And then we went to the best allergists in the country in New York. And they weren't doing very much for him here in Sayville. So I went to New York. I asked the pediatrician, where's the best? And he went to his library and picked out 2 books, and he said, these are my reference books. I said, make an appointment with that doctor. So he went there and he tested him, and he said, my advice is to move to Florida, and if you can't do it there, Arizona.
How old is your son then?
He's now 41, 42.
How old was he when that happened?
2.5. Oh,
No,
at that
yeah.
time, he was about 6 years old, 7 years old.
So you moved back then to Florida? You lived up here part of the time, down here part of the time?
Yes.
Okay, I didn't realize that. Okay. Do you remember this day when this happened?
I sure do.
Tell me about it.
Well, I went to church in the morning. I had another car, and I put the Ford truck in Hackett Simonian's garage for the winter. And with that truck, I used to hold card parties at the Shoreham or at the Kensington Hotel. And I'd go to the undertakers, and they had chairs, and I would put the chairs in my truck and take them wherever. I got $1 for that. And so I put my grandfather gave me the Pontiac, so I had the 2 cars. So I put the Ford truck into Hackett Simonian's garage. I went to church in the morning. I drove down to the bay to look at the ice, and there was my car out there on the ice.
Who did that?
My brothers, my older brothers in Hackett,
Okay.
Tom McGoldrick, they took my car to see if the ice was full. But they knew the icebreaker couldn't come through, so they knew that it was pretty solid. Because the icebreaker would come through with the tankers taking the oil to the pack shop.
Oh.
And he's Tom McGoldrick, George Skinner, Eric Teets, Coast Guard. Tom just died recently, and he was the best friend I ever had. Eric Teets became a Lutheran minister. His father owned a drugstore on Midland Road. Huck Simonian. Huck's father came over here. He was a diplomat for this country. He came over here to escape the Turks. And he married, and Huck was born.
And I lived in Sayville.
Mhm.
Is the last man your brother, Howard Greene? Did you have a
And this
brother?
is my brother Howard.
Howard.
He was a civil engineer.
Okay.
He was very smart. He was a civil engineer, aeronautical engineer, naval architect. He never finished school. He was going to school all the time. When he got a degree in one, he'd go to another, working at the same time. So anyway, my car was out there. So I was a little bit upset. But then I went home, changed my clothes, and went back, and we drove across to Cherry Grove, and then we drove to Lone Hill, visited the Coast Guard, and then drove home.
This is,
Lone Hill, Coast Guard tower, looking down.
what was the name of the hill?
Lone Hill.
Lone
yeah.
Hill.
Lone Hill Coast Guard Station. But the ice was thick. When the three cars were going across, they tied each other together. And if it went through, they could pull them out before they got too cold.
I hoped. Okay. Was that the same day as the plane landed?
With this plane called Posivon was flying, we were parked out in the road taking a picture, out in the middle of the bay, taking a picture.
The same day?
That day.
Same day, okay.
Well, everything happened the same day.
Okay.
And Carl flew over maybe 100 feet above us. And we kept going like this, and he kept on like that. And finally, we put the three cars together to show him the ice was thick enough for him to land. And then he landed. And then we took pictures. We put one car on the dock.
Oh, I
And then one
see.
down here
Okay.
to show people that we were at Cherry Grove. This is at the public beach in Sayville.
Okay, Public Beach. And that was at the bottom of Forster Avenue?
Mm. I think it's Browns River Road, I think they call it.
Okay. And then that's the showroom in the background.
The
Is Your
showroom.
brother, and which brother was that?
Walter. Hockup worked for some big concern. Tom worked for Gulf Oil. He was an accountant. My whole history was that I had brothers 8 years older than I, and all of their friends were my friends. I never had any friends of my age. They were always 8 years, 5 or 6, 8 years older than I. That's why I was so serious all the time.
Even though your schoolmates, you didn't, people your own age?
Mm. I never associated with people my own age. I never knew them well enough.
Well, you started working at 16, you said, right?
No, at this time I was about 17.
So whose idea was to do this? To have the plane land on the ice?
That's Carl's plane.
And his family was a big name in Sayville, Posivon?
Oh, they were a very good name. Carl owned a machine shop. There was a plane down, they were trying to attempt to fly over Europe about the time of Lindbergh, 28, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And this plane went down in Greenland, and there was only one person in the country that could make the part for the plane. That was called Posivon. There was another, I've forgotten his name, Wally Post, I think. He ran he was going to try to fly the Atlantic too. And they flew across by Greenland, and his plane broke down, and he landed in Greenland. And they couldn't find a part, no one could make the part for their plane except Carl. He was the only one in the United States that could make the part. So he made the part, and they took it up to Greenland, fixed the plane up, and I don't know whether they went over to Europe or came back. Carl was an excellent machinist. He owned a machine shop on Lakeland Avenue.
Okay. And he built planes?
That plane he had, that was a World War I plane. He had an airport where the Lincoln Avenue School is now.
Okay.
That was his airport, right to Hopkins Street. And he owned that. He had a shed or whatever to put the plane in. And he would fly around to relax himself. And finally sold the plane, sold the airport.
Did you ever go in it with him?
No, I never did. My brother did though. He flew from 1936. No, this was 1936. 1938, I have pictures of them landing. The mail would be flown over to Floyd Bennett Field, and it celebrated some post office. And so Carl flew my brother and the Sayville mail to Islip, and Islip, there was another plane there, a bigger plane, and they had all of Islip town postmasters there. And the bigger plane flew the mail from Islip to Floyd Bennett. I have a envelope commemorating. It's addressed to my younger brother, but it was commemorating that flight.
Okay.
But we had a good time that day. We had lots of good times on the bay, scootering.
What's that?
That's like have you ever seen a tugboat where they go gunning, a very low
Oh, yeah.
type of boat with decks on it and all,
Yeah.
just a cockpit.
Okay.
And so we used to go, and they had runners on it.
All right.
And you go maybe 50, 60 miles an hour
On ice, you're talking?
on ice
Okay. Like.
with a sail.
Oh, okay.
And then you had ice boat, are you familiar with ice boats?
I've seen pictures.
Yeah. But we had the scootering. We had good times there too. One time we tipped over doing around 50, 60 miles an hour. And I had a leather coat on. Gibby Collins had a jacket, padded jacket. So we skidded across the ice maybe 100, 150 feet on our backs.
Oh, goodness. You hope you didn't get hurt.
So then we put the scooter up and went more scootering. It's just something that happens.
That's what happens when you live on the water, that's
Yeah.
the kind of thing.
For quite a few times they had ice boating in Belport, races, and Lake Ronkonkoma, but you don't have that anymore. People don't have the fun we had.
Does the bay freeze that much anymore?
I don't think it froze since this time. Maybe a couple times it might have frozen, but not thick enough to go on.
the stories for me?
It was, as I say, we had a lot of fun when I was young.
Yeah.
Everybody knew one another. We got together. Yeah. Tom was my best friend.
Okay.
Played golf with him. We learned to play golf together. He would meet me out. I'd go to work early in the post office early in the morning, so I would be finished around 4:30. And Tom worked with Gulf Oil, so he would be finished around 4:30. So then he would meet me. We'd go to East Islip. They had Judge Griffin owned a 9-hole golf course, 50 cents to play it. And so we'd play, every night we'd play 9 holes of golf and then go home for supper.
Nice.
I played with him in Florida. We played Bethpage, Riverhead, wherever, Islip Terrace. We went around and played. In Florida, we went to different golf courses and played. Then we got too old. I was playing golf one time. I was about 88 years old then. And well, I used to drive, my drives were about 240 yards. And I drove, well, that one day, and I drove about 190. I said, what is wrong with me? To the people playing. And I said, I can't drive as far as I used to. And they said, you're old. I never knew it. I never thought of age. I was, at 50, I could outrun my son. We had races to see who could beat each other. And I lived in Florida then, and so we would race, and I could outrace him.
And then you stopped playing at that point, golf?
No, not that time. No. 28 years later, I stopped playing golf. I still have my golf clubs.
The photos of the hurricane, you said that was Cherry.
Everything there except this is Sayville.
Okay.
This is Sayville. All the rest of them are Cherry Grove.
Okay. Okay.
My son could have gone to college and he didn't go.
Why?
Didn't want to.
No.
I had a cousin whose son said that he could get him into Princeton. Dr. Fontana, the allergist, my son used to say, Doctor, I'd like to talk to you. He was 6 or 7 years old. I'd like to talk to you alone, doctor. So Dr. Fontana would take him into his office, and one time he said, I said, what did he want to talk to you about? He said, well, I told him he couldn't eat spaghetti sauce and spaghetti. And he said, couldn't I just have it once a month? The doctor said, yes. He said, I made a scholarship for him in, I think, Columbia Medical School. All he has to do is graduate from college and he can go into school, medical school. Because I asked him what he wanted to be. He wanted to be a doctor. And he said, just go in, graduate from college, and he's in. So he could have gone to Princeton, he could have gone to Columbia.
Not in the cards for him,
Yeah.
not meant to be. Okay, thank you so much.